Welcome to the CodeMave Android tutorials. Today, I'm going to introduce you to how to build a Google Maps clone using Kotlin and integrating with the Firebase Realtime Database application. So I went forward to create a sample app, and I'm going to run this app for you to see and to have a feel of what we are going to be building. So let me run this application now. And then Gradle is building, so we have to wait quite a bit. I must say that it is a very simple application that uses an approach that we do every day. So here is the application launching, and here we have been asked for location device access. So we choose while using the application. So anytime we are using the application, this permission is already given. So this is the Google Maps. I have gone ahead to add some style to this, which you see in this raw file. So you see map style. This I had to generate, but that will not be a focus of our tutorial today. Over here in this drop down, you would see different types of maps. So this is the normal map, a hybrid map, satellite, and a terrain. So the normal map is what we're seeing right now. Click on a hybrid map, and then our map changes. And then we click on the satellite, and it gives us a satellite view. And lastly, the terrain gives us a terrain view of what a map does. So what our integration with Firebase is going to be that when we click on a location, when we long press a location and a marker is shown, this selected location is going to be saved to a real-time database on Firebase. So we are using the free real-time database that Google provides through Firebase. So that is what we're going to do today. And so when we click on a particular location, it's the camera comes into view, and here we see that we dropped a pin at a latitude and then a longitude. So this is what we are going to be building today, and this is going to give you the fundamental skill set for you to integrate Google Maps into your native applications. And so because I have already built this, I am not going to work on this file. I'll go ahead and move it off the screen. And I'm going to start a new wizard. Okay, so if you're wondering how we got here, you go to File, New, and then a new project. It is that simple. So this wizard comes up, and all you need to do is to select the Google Maps activity. So you select Google Maps activity and you click next. And here we're going to provide a name for our application. We're going to call it Google Maps Clone. And you would see that the name is generated, the location is generated. So I'm going to save it to my name projects and then the name of the application. I'm going to be using Kotlin, like I said at the very beginning. We are using Kotlin in this particular tutorial and not Java. Kotlin is cleaner and much more beautiful to work with. So we click Finish, and then here our application is built. You see down here that Gradle is actually building our application for us. So I'm going to extend this to cover the entire screen. I want to keep our emulator here so that we would be able to see changes even as we build. So here is the structure of our application. we say the name of our application adds up to the package name, so com.codemap.googlemaps_clone. And our code is going to reside in here inside this maps activity. I'll go ahead and clear this note. And you would also notice that we have a Google Maps API file here in the values folder inside our resources. And all that this does, you will see a debug around it. That means that this particular file will only work when we are testing locally. But if we are to build our application for production, we would have to create a new file like this, but it will be the release version of this particular file. Now, if you take a very good notice, you realize that there is your key here being stated. So that means that we would need to generate a Google Maps API key, which would come paste here in order for our map to work. All right, that said, let's go. So there is a very good note that Google leaves for you here that before you run your application, you need a Google Maps API key. So that means that we'll have to create a Google Maps API key at some point. But before we do that, I want you to take a look at how the layout of our application is. So our application layout is located in the layout folder inside resources. And in this layout folder is the activity maps, which maps up to the class activity that is defined here. So we double click this and we are going to see a view. We see a palette here where we can drag and drop elements. But the interesting thing I want you to look at is at the side, at the top right corner, you see a split. So if you go to code, you're only going to see the code behind the view that you're seeing. If you go to the design, you're only going to see the design view. But if you go to a split, then you see both code and design. So while you are writing, while you are including something here in code, XML code, you'll see it render here in real time. Or if you decide to work with the design palette, for instance, and you drag stuff, you should see the code update alongside. So I'm going to click this palette again, and it's going to go off. One thing I would want you to take a look at critically at this point is the support map fragment in here, which is a name. So this fragment, entire view is a fragment that has a width of match parent. That means that our width is going to take the width of whatever the size of its parent is. In this particular, in the emulator, the width is, or the parent is the width of the device. And so if we say we are matching parents, then it's going to take the width of the parent. And when we are if the height is to match parent, then it's going to take the height of the whole application. So this is the height of the screen that has been provided because this space is taken and the status bar has taken another, but the rest of the space is left for this particular match height. So the map takes the entire screen. One interesting thing to look at over here is the name feature. When a name feature is provided for a fragment, it is using the support map fragment is the simplest way to include a fragment inside or to place a map inside an application. Because the support map fragment is actually a wrapper around a view of a map and enables us to automatically handle the necessary lifecycle needs that we have. So all that you need to do is to include this support map fragment inside a fragment tag, and you are good to go. Don't forget that additional attributes you need is this name. Excuse me. All right, so here we are. Currently, if we to run this application, the simplest thing we will do is actually to just click this button. But if we did that right now, our code will not work. Our code will not work because we do not have the Google Maps API key. Now, so the first thing we're going to do is to create the Google Maps API key. But before that, let's take a look at the logic that works behind the scenes for our view to be displayed. This is happening inside a maps activity. And in the maps activity, we initialize our fragment, which is the support maps fragment in here. Don't forget we have a certain ID that references this particular fragment. So we call the map ID here, which represents this fragment, and we say that it is a type of support map fragment. And then we set this map fragment to be in sync with this particular activity. Over here, you see an on map ready callback. This allows us to make or to interact with the map, and it gives one of the functions it gives us is the on map ready. So what do we do when the map is ready? That is all that the on map ready function here is saying. So this particular function is telling us that what do we do when the map is ready? What we do is that we take a Google Map object and we set that to our Google Map object that we previously defined here. We use the late init because we are going to initialize it later. And so that is what the initialization that is taking place here. And then we create a latitude and a longitude. And we set, currently you see that it's set to Sydney. And of course, it is set to Sydney because Sydney is where Google Maps was built, was created. So it is almost always that it's going to be set to Sydney whenever you generate a Google Maps. But we can change this, and we are going to change this to the location of the city where you are. And we are adding a marker to this particular map, and we are setting the position of the marker. We are setting the title of the marker as marker in Sydney. And then on the map object, what we're doing is that we are going to move the camera to focus on our current latitude and longitude. So when we change this latitude and longitude and we hit the run button, it's going to set that new latitude and longitude to this object, set it to this camera update factory, and that will cause the camera or the focus of your screen to move from wherever it is to the new latitude and longitude location where the marker is located. All right, so we would first need to create the Google Maps API key, and the simplest way to do it is to just click on this link. So I'm going to press command on my keyboard, command on my keyboard, and I'm going to press this. So when I do that, right, it takes me directly to my account. Mind you, I am already logged in here. So what do? I create a new project. I'll agree to the terms. Yes, I am in Finland. I wouldn't want to receive periodic emails from Google. So I click agree. Oh, excuse me. Create a project. Yes. So, oh, all right. So if we look at the top right corner, we see it has. Okay, so it has created a project. Next, we are going to create the API key. So I click on create API key. Nice. All right, so it creates the API key for me, and it names it API key 1. Luckily for me, we have this edit button, so I could just go ahead and edit it. And I'm going to call this key by our Google Maps clone API key. All right, and over here you see that there is a restriction that has been placed on it because we clicked on the link directly from the application. It sets it that it's going to be visible for only Android apps. However, if you had gone into your personal account and had come to the Google Cloud platform or the console.cloud.google.com with your Gmail account, then you would have to select which particular application. So you could change this, but since we are building for an Android application, this is what we're going to use. And you'll notice that because we click on that link, it automatically picks the package name of the application, which is com.codemave.google maps clone. All right, so I edited this. I can go about, copy this and save. Okay, so now that I have copied my API key, all that I need to do is to go back to my application, and over here I'm going to paste this key right there. All right. So now that the key is pasted, all that we have to do is to run the application. But before I do that, I would want to check the name of my application, which is Google Maps clone. All right. And the title of the application, I would want to change the title here. So we're able to see that it's not a current application running in there that is still showing. So I'm going to repeat the name, Google Maps clone. And now I'm going to run this. And when it runs, this should change. So I'm going to be checking my build here. And we can see that the build is actually working. Gradle is building our application for us, so we will be patient. All right, so now here we go. So our current application is running, and you see that marker is set to Sydney. And if we click on the marker, you see the text marker in Sydney, which is really cool. I am a very curious individual. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this and I'm going to say, welcome to Sydney. Okay, so this time around, I'm just going to hit this run button, more like a refresh, and then it's going to quickly build. I'm going to go on and take that particular screen off. Okay, so now when we click on the marker, it changes to welcome to Sydney. So cool. So now we have just built our Google Maps application, but there is so much more that we can do. There is so much more. And so the first thing that I would want us to do is to find out where our location is, our current location. And let me go ahead and minimize this. Okay. So you want to find out where your current location is, where you live. What is the latitude and longitude of the place you live? And it would be really cool for you to just update those, but we'll come to that. All right. We're going to go ahead with this Google Maps. And the next thing we are going to do is to locate where you live. So go ahead and find just a simple Google search, and you're going to find out what the longitude and the latitude of the city in which you live in is. You can open Google Maps on the browser and just right click any place on, let's say, I think it's just going to be maps.google.com. And then you Yeah, so you just click it, you click wherever, and then it just shows. Okay, the latitude and the longitude just shows. I could reduce this and zone into, um, yeah, let's go to somewhere, Colorado. Let's go to Denver, and yeah. So you could right click and it shows, or you could click on wherever and it's going to show down here. All right, so you can just copy that and you are going to make changes. So what we're going to do, I'm going to clear all this. I am going to clear all this and we are going to start from a very clean slate. All right, so first of all, we create a val and I go with city name. And our variable is going to hold the latitude and longitude of our city name. So this latitude and longitude comes with us because we are using the Google Maps API. We are able to use the latitude and longitude. So here you could see right from here, we're able to use that. So lat and long, and we're going to provide our numbers. You can see the parameter is asking for a double. So the first one is the latitude and the second one is the longitude. And when I hover over it, you are able to see what is required. So a double latitude and a double longitude. So I'm going to type, I live in Oulu, a city in northern Finland. And so I'm going to type the latitude for the city in which I live in. And now I type the longitude of the city that I live in. Okay, so this is it. Now I have the latitude and the longitude of the city that I live in. The next thing I'm going to do is to set a zoom level. Okay, that determines how zoomed in this particular view is going to be, and I'm going to set that to 15F. Now the F just shows that it's a floating point number, all right, because the zoom requires a float. All right, so the next thing is, what do I do after this? I want to set the map, I want to set the camera of the map to this particular location, to my current city. Maybe we just change this to current city. Yeah, this name sounds much more interesting. So I'm going to use the mmap dot move camera, and we're going to use the camera update factory dot new latitude and longitude, and then we add the zoom. So that we are going to provide our latitude and longitude, which is our current city, and then our zoom level. And you see, it requires a float. So our zoom level is a float because we added the F to it. Now that works. Imagine I take the float out, we have an issue here, and it says that I'm providing an int, just a 15, but then it is expecting a float. So if I did this, it's going to cast my int into a float, but we can leave it that way. But I would just want to put an F here, make it a float, and all looks good. All right, so now when I move the camera to my current, let us run this and see what happens. So initially it was Sydney. Excuse me for a moment. I want to clear out the previous application completely. Okay. All right. So we see that it has moved the camera from Sydney all the way to my current city. It has changed the zoom level to 15. Imagine we want to update the zoom level. I want it to be pretty obvious, so I'm going to leave it at 5. And then we refresh. Okay, so you see it didn't zoom, it zoomed out. All right, so because it is just 5, it zooms out. But then if we increase it to 15, it's going to zoom in. So the higher this number, the more it zooms in onto the particular location. So we're going to move on to add a marker. We want to be able to identify the particular latitude and longitude in the seat in my current city of Olo. So we're going to have mmap.add marker, which is quite simple. And then all that we're going to do is call the marker options dot position, and we're going to supply our current city. All right. And that is all we need. So we click this. It's going to rebuild our activity. Oh, excuse me. Yes, and now we have a marker at the specific position that our latitude and longitude lead us. Okay, so this is it. We have technically created this very nice application. And so what do we want to do? You want to be able to move, you want to be able to move your map around, you want to be able to see things, you want to be able to do a whole lot. Over here, we see these some locations already highlighted. Now, those are some things we call points of interest or places of interest. And so we are going to write an application, we are going to write a function, excuse me, that targets these places of interest. But before that, we want to allow users to be able to leave markers where they have been. So you go to your city, you're going to move around and you say, oh, so I have been here, and then I'm going to leave a marker there. So to create that marker, what we're going to do is to create a function. And our function is will be called fun. To create a function in Kotlin, you use a keyword fun. So when do we want the marker to appear? We don't just want the marker to appear when we click, but we want the marker to appear when we click and hold. That is a long click. So we are going to say set map long, excuse me, long click, and it's going to take what? A map. You got it right. It's going to take a map, and then we are going to manipulate this particular map. So we are going to say that when you long click, we the map objects that we have, we are going to work on its listener. So set on map long click listener. This is what we're going to call. So we call this particular function. And so this function that is inbuilt on the Google map is going to notice any long clicks. And once it notices a long click, it's going to do something for us. All right, so the first thing we are going to do is to create a snippet, and it's going to come in this format. We're going to say local.getDefault, and our format is going to be in a string form. So it's going to be 0.5f. I'm going to explain these a bit later. 0.5f, okay. And then we provide our latitude and longitude. All right, so this here is just referencing an object called a latitude and a longitude. All right, so nice. We have created a snippet. What do we do next? We have access to our map objects from here, and we are going to set a marker. So we are going to add a marker to this map. So on long click, we are going to add a marker. And to add a marker, we need a marker options. And we say position. Our position is going to be latitude and longitude, which is referenced as 8. And we're going to give it a title. And what should be the title of our marker? We can say, welcome to, okay, let's say marker here. And then we're going to add a snippet, which we created at the top, so snippet. All right, so this snippet is going to be, it's going to take our latitude and our longitude, and it's going to show them in this format. So you're going to see lat, and then the value of the latitude, and you're going to see long, and it's going to take the value of the longitude, and it's going to insert in there. All right, and this F is technically saying that, all right, this is going to be the one is taking the first position, and we want, oh, I left out, great, I left out a $sign. All right, so the one is saying this is going to go into the first position, and it's going to have 5 decimal points as a float. And this is going to take the second position, and it's going to have 5 decimal points, and it's a float as well. And so to have this working, we're going to come into our on create, and we're going to excuse me, on ready map. When a map is ready, when our map is ready, we are going to set our map long click, and we are going to add a map. All right, so we supply this Google Map object that we have to our function, and it's going to add a marker whenever we long click a particular place. So we run this. Lo and behold, we are here. So where do I want to leave a marker? Say I have been here before. So all that I need to do, definitely I have been to Idea Park. So I'm just going to long click, and there we have our marker pop up. I click on the marker and it comes into view because the move camera has caught it to come into view, and then it shows our latitude and our longitude. So you see here, it has 5 numbers after the decimal point, and over here as well, it has 5, just according to how we defined it in here. So this is how it is. Whenever you click on a marker, the camera moves to that particular marker. All right, so we can create as many markers as we want. We could just long click here, and we have another marker, and then it just moves into its position. So this title could change. You could put anything in there. This was the original one that didn't have a snippet added to it. So when we click on this marker, nothing actually pops up. But we click on this, and the marker is shown. All right. So what about these? Up to now, when we click on these points, it just zooms in. Double click, it just zooms in. Nothing really works. Why is that? So what we're going to do is these places that have markers already are places of interest, places that interest people. So it could be a hospital, it could be a park, it could be anything. All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to create a different function for those. And so we're going to say point of interest. We're going to set function set point of interest click. And it's also going to take a map, Google Maps. And then technically we're going to implement this on Google Maps. So it's going to be set on POI, point of interest, click listener. And all that this is going to do. All right, so over here we used it. Now I want to introduce something else, lat lang. Okay, so instead of it, we could reference our object here as a lat and a lang, and that is what we're going to be using for this particular example. So we are going to create a POI marker, and we are going to say map.add marker. And of course, to add marker, we need a marker options. And then we are saying position, and our position this time here we used the it, but over here we're going to use a lat lang object dot lat lang. Okay, so using this isn't really the best. Okay, so if I call this a point, then we can say a point dot latitude and longitude. Okay, that works fine. And we're going to give it a title as well. And our title is going to be the latitude, the point dot name. Now, this point already has a name because it is a point of interest. All right. So the next thing we're going to do would be to show information window about this particular position. So point.show info window. All right, and then we are going to add this to set POI click, and we supply the mmap to it. So we supply the map to this function as well, and we are going to run. Now when we click on a point of interest, now when we click on a point of interest, it shows us the name of the point of interest because the name already exists in the map, you see. So because it is a point of interest, of course. We can still click and hold for a while, and then we are going to create a marker. And with ours, so now you see the set map long click is working. It provides a latitude and a longitude. But the other places, you click on them, and it's just going to show the name, which we are showing in the title, of course. Remember, we don't have a snippet for those. All right, so this is the interesting part of Google Maps. Next thing that I would want us to do is to integrate our Google Maps with Firebase. All right, so what is Firebase? We're just going to go to firebase.google.com, and yeah, let's. All right, so we go to the console and we create a new project. And what will be the name of our project? Is going to be Google Maps clone. All right. So we continue. It does a lot of things for us. Allows us to handle push notifications. It handles authentication for us, so you can log in. You can create authentication for your users using Firebase. It has a cloud file store that allows you to store files. The storage allows you to store anything. The database allows you to store objects in your database. It provides you with real-time dashboards, conversions, events. It is powerful. You can use it for your A/B testing. Cloud messaging is here. In-app messaging is also there. So it is really, really, really cool. Firebase is really, really cool. Now we have created a project, but we need to create an app. And since our app is an Android application, we need to add that app to Firebase. So we click on Android here, and then it's going to ask us to provide the package name of our application. So we come back to our application, and then our package name is at the top right here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to come here and I'm just going to paste it. Okay, and then I need to give a nickname of the application. I'm going to repeat Google Maps clone, and we could leave this optional. It's optional, so we could leave it empty. And so I'm going to register this application. Now we are asked for the package name because Google, whenever we try to use Firebase, it's going to check if it's going to match our application to our app here on Firebase using the package name and some other tools like this file that is given us to download. So we need to download this configuration file. We download it onto our browser, and we would have to load. I'm going to show this in my file system, and then bring up. So it has downloaded onto my machine, and I need to bring it into my application. Now, what you do is that this particular file, this Google services.json file, needs to be in the root folder of your application. And so I'm going to drag it from my file system, and I'm going to just make sure that the app is selected, and then you're going to drop it. And it says, okay, do you want to move this file in here? I say yes, refactor. So it moves the file in here, and you see a lot of information that is generated. So our project ID was generated when we entered our package name. You see our application package name is also here. Some client IDs and stuff have been generated. API key is in here as well. So with this, our application would be connected to Firebase. Now, we are not done yet. We need to go to the next stage. So this is just a demonstration of where we need to put it, which we have done inside the application tag. So that is where ours is. And you go to next, and it says that we need to add Firebase to our we need to add the Firebase SDK to our application. And so I'm going to bring this, I'm going to reduce it a bit. And so we could work side by side. CSDK instructions. Okay, great. All right, so now it says that we need to open the project level build.gradle, and so we expand our Gradle script, and we'll see that this is the project level build.gradle. So we're going to click this, and we have been asked to make sure that we have Google in our repositories, which we already have here. And we need to copy this line. We need to add this line to our dependencies. So we can click on this and copy. This is our dependencies. And so we're going to add that line right in there. And then in the projects, we need to check that we have Google. And over here, all projects repositories, you see that we already have Google in there. So all that we need to do is to sync our Gradle file. So it is syncing with Gradle. And mind you, because we're using Kotlin, if we're using Java, you realize that it's just Firebase Analytics. But with Kotlin, it has an extension KTX added. So we need to ensure that that is done. Now, Gradle is done building. This particular one is also build Gradle, but not this file. It is a module, the application level Gradle. So we're going to click that, and we need to add this plugin, Google plugin that needs to be added. Now we can see that our current plugin is, in the plugins, we have Kotlin Android and com.android.application. So we need to copy this and we need to add that in our plugin. But we already have our plugin in here defined. So all that we need to do is call this ID, and that is it. And then we also need to add the Firebase in our dependencies. So we're going to click this, and then we scroll down to dependencies. I love to separate my dependencies, and I love to name them. So you can say, you can call it Firebase, and you know this relates to Firebase. And we also need to add the Firebase analytics as well. We copy that as well. So we have this. All right, so I love to separate my dependencies this way. So if I have one from a different provider, I'm just going to go down, give it a name, so they are easy to access. So again, we need to sync our Gradle files. And once Gradle is done syncing, we just go to next, and next it says that we are ready. So great, we are ready. We continue to console. So now it brings us to our console, which I would expand in a bit. So all that we have to do to make sure things run, we can go to build, and I haven't sure we will clean our project. So the application lets go of any variables that it's holding on to. Then we rebuild our project. Rebuilding the project also runs a clean. You can see here, it cleans, and then it pre-builds, and then it builds the application. So now Gradle is building again. It is important that from time to time you clean and rebuild, so that anytime your application is holding on to variables that have been lost, they will just let them go, and then you have a clean slate to work. All right, so now I'm going to bring back our emulator, and then we're going to rerun the application and see if anything changes, if anything breaks, based on after we have introduced our dependencies. All right, so it didn't break. Everything works fine. We double click. We click for long. Now our markers show. We click on the POI. It works as well. Great. Now we need to include our real-time database. Okay, so this is our real-time database. I'm going to click on that, and we need to create a real-time database. There are videos that you can watch and lots of resources that you can read to fully understand what goes on. But here we're going to create our database, and I'm going to leave it here, US Central, and in lock mode, in test mode, well, I'm going to here, if you choose this, your database will be private, so it will deny all reads and writes. If you use this, then it's going to give you a certain time period for you to be able to work, and then it's going to delete all your data. Well, I would go with 30 days. We can always change this. Truth is, we can always edit this. So I'm going to go with this, and then we enable. So we are enabling our real-time database. All right, now this is good. So this is our real-time database. Now, what we're going to do is that whenever we add a marker, so I'm going to clear all these, close all. All right, so I'm going to reopen our maps activity. Okay, so what we are going to do is that whenever we need to make it private, so all this thing goes on because we're not using it anywhere else. All right. So what we're going to do is this: we are going to connect with our real-time database in this sense that whenever we create a marker, whenever we add a marker, the latitude and longitude of the backup position are sent and updated into our database. All right, so all that we need to do is do something very simple in here. We are going to declare a database variable, and we are going to say Firebase. Because of the dependencies that we had imported, now we have Firebase available to us. Um, hang on. Yes. Firebase is supposed to give me some dependencies. Oh, okay. Let me see. com.google.firebase.ktx database. All right, database is not available, so should just give me a sec. Go. Yeah, let me check that. Permissions. Let me see if I actually put. Okay, all right, all right. So we only put Firebase Analytics in there, but we didn't add database. Okay, so I need to add the database in here. Implementation com.google.firebase. Excuse me. Firebase, and it's going to be database.ktx. Okay, so we're going to sync. Now sync is done. And so I could just stop trying to import this, and I'm going to do it here. The data, nice. Now we have database, great. So we want access to our database, and we need to provide a URL to our database. We need to provide a URL to our database. So we come to, where are you, real-time database? Yeah, so all that we need to do is to click on this, and then we copy this URL and paste this URL in here. All right, ideally, I would paste this URL in a string, so we could do that after we have tested. So so now we have access to our database URL. Now, one thing we would want to do is to set a value to the value of our latitude and longitude to database. So we are going to create a reference, and our reference is going to be the database we just created. Then we get a reference to this particular location, and we want to say, okay, when you come here, the first thing we want to do is to have locations. So we say our path is actually locations. Excuse me. All right, and then we set data. So what do? We want to uh, excuse me. We just get a reference to this particular location. And then we're going to use a reference and we're going to say, all right, let's create an entry into this particular uh, database location. So our data entered would be our reference that we're going to push. And when we push, it gives us an ID. So we're going to push and we're going to add a child. And what is the child that we want to add? We want to add it at a location. And the value that we want to add is our latitude and longitude, which we can leave as the whole object. So we want to push the whole object, latitude and longitude object, to the database. All right, so let's run this. We bring our emulator up, and then we want to see what happens when we long click. There you go. All right, so when we long click, we can expand this. All right, so when we expand, the first one is a chart that we are seeing, which is a location, and the value is our object that we created here. So it technically breaks down our object into a latitude and a longitude, the contents of into a JSON, and just inserts it in there. Because this is a SQL database, it is able to just take the value that we provided and is going to put it in there. So you can create a custom class object and just send that object to uh, this real-time database, and it's going to save it like that for you. All right, so we can do much more than we are doing. We can press and hold another place and it creates another object instance and gives us a very different location. You can see our latitude is different from this one and our longitude is equally different. So this is how we integrate Google Maps simply. And we integrate Firebase into our application in a very, very simple way, a very, very simple manner. All right, next, I would want to finish up by introducing you to the different maps that Google offers. And it is interesting that you may want to try out something different, a different layout of how the Google Maps is like. So what we're going to do is that just like I showed you the other day where we had a menu icon and then you could change the map types, we're going to do the same thing. So we are going to expand. Excuse me, we're going to, in our IRES, we're going to create a new resource directory and we're going to call it menu. Yeah, and so we're just going to click OK, and a menu is created. And then we're going to create a new menu resource file, and we are going to name it map options. All right, so here we have our map options in the, it's in design mode, so we can change it to split, or we can just change it to code to get enough space. All right, so what are we going to do? We are going to create a list of, let's use a split. All right, so we are going to create a list of items, and each item needs to have an ID. And so first we'll have normal, okay, and this normal will have a title, and we'll call it normal map. And we want to show, do we always want it to persist? Do we always want to show, do we always want to show it here in our menu or not? We say never. We can also say if room. That means that it's going to show if there is room. So right now that there is room, it is showing a normal map. Okay, then the text in there. Then we can come to the next item, and we say ID, and uh, let's just add a map to our variables just to make sure that we are unique across. And this is going to be hybrid map, and show us action. And if we say always, it's always going to be there. Irrespective of anything, it's always going to be there. But we don't want to show any of them. We don't want to show any of them. We'll have to click on the dots here in order to see them. So we have two more to go. ID and hybrid will go for satellite map, and title is going to be satellite map, and show as action never. And lastly, we go for our ID is going to be the terrain, and also we do not show this, we do not show at all. All right, so we have created a menu which looks beautiful here. Now the question is, how do we bring it into our application? If we were to run our application right now, although we have created a menu, the menu file, it's not going to show. We can test that and see. So here, our application is in, but we don't have any menu. That is because we haven't inflated it yet. So what we are going to do is to inflate our menu. And to do that, there is a predefined function called onCreate options menu. Yeah, so it's going to be overriding. So it already exists, we are just going to override it. And what we're going to do is that we are going to create an inflator and reference that to menu inflator, all right, which refers to an existing component that is internal to Android. And then we are going to say, okay, get this inflator to inflate our menu. So we need to have access to our menu, and we can get that using our resource.menu dot the name of our file, which is map options. And this inflate function takes a menu. So we're going to type menu. Now this menu is the menu that is coming in from here. All right, that is being passed in dynamically by Android. And so because this returns a Boolean, we are going to return true. Now, if we rerun this application, now our menu shows. And so we click on our menu and we're able to see our menu show here. But when we click on the items, nothing happens. That is because we need to implement an additional logic for us to be able to see uh, those maps rendered. So how do we do this? We go back to our code and we again rely on a predefined method on options item selected. So we just click on that and it's going to give us this. All right. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to clear everything and I'm going to say I'm going to use the when method, which is more like a switch case, but very, very powerful in Kotlin. And so I'm going to pick this item and I'm going to say item.item ID. So technically it's like I'm switch casing this value in here and I introduce the brackets and I'm going to say, okay, if this ID matches id.normal map, which is the ID that we have set in our map here, the map options there. So if it matches that, then, excuse me, if it matches that, then our map and map objects are a map object here. We are going to change its map type. And we are saying its map type should be Google Map dot map type normal. And we're going to return true. Okay, so we are going to do the same thing for hybrid. So hybrid map. Okay, so if our ID matches the hybrid map, then we're going to set the map type to Google Map hybrid. And then we're going to return true. And we'll do the same thing for satellite. And then lastly, we are going to do for the terrain. Okay, so if it is terrain, then we say Google Map should show us the terrain. All right, but what if it is none of the above? Then we use else. All right, so if it matches this one, then this works, we return true. But if none of these, then we use the else function. So the when is a very powerful tool in Kotlin for Android development. So we just use, if nothing happens at all, or it doesn't match, then we're going to return the original. So super dot on options item selected. And this is all we need. So we run our application now. And what do we see? Okay, let's click on hybrid. And there we go. It changes. We click on terrain and it gives us a terrain. And mind you, the whole time, these things still work. It moves in automatically. It creates the location in our real-time database. And we can see the 08758, 0875, so, excuse me, 0759. We are showing the first five. This is showing the whole thing. All right. So this is the power of Kotlin, Android, and Firebase. So you can have all your user data. It could be a game you are developing. It could be something. Or you could create a very simple application that you're walking around town and you want to mark the places that you have been. So whenever you just long click on a map, it's going to save your that current location to the um, Firebase Realtime Database application, and then later on you can retrieve this data. And if you want to plot where you have been, you can plot it. You can use this to locate um, things that you have kept at various places, or maybe bars that you have visited, or places that you have met your friends, or stuff like that. This is a very simple tutorial to show how you can use Google Maps and how you can integrate Firebase into using Google Maps application. So thank you very much. Always we'll be uploading more and more videos. You can subscribe to our channel. We would very much appreciate that. If you liked it, leave your comments in the comment box. And next time, I'm going to introduce you to how you can customize your Google Maps layout with different colors to indicate roads and all that. So look forward to the next tutorial and see you then.